some point, and
okay, and we'll just keep talking.
yeah, and we'll just keep talking. I think we're live now. So,
All right, awesome.
Mike, thanks for being open to having me come out and shoot the podcast here at the new Wilmington MPO office.
Sure, we'd love to have you, Chris.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an honor to have you down here to see what we've done to the space and talk about transportation.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Me either.
No, but seriously, I got to take a moment and say, if I were to look back when I was 18 going into college, and if someone told me that I'd be sitting here today with you at the MPO doing a podcast session, I'd be like, no, you're crazy. So this is a pretty cool moment for me personally to be here with you. So
Well, it's a cool moment for me personally also to be here to talk with you, because quite frankly, if you would have told me when I was graduating college that I'd be here in Wilmington, North Carolina in 2025, I would probably say you're crazy too.
yeah.
Especially in the transportation field and being in transportation since I graduated from college and moving down to Wilmington in early, I guess, 2020 or 2002 is when I came down here, and so it's crazy to think I've been doing this for that long.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing about what you guys have done and in that time period. And let's start with, tell us, what is the WMPO? What are the core responsibilities and activities that you guys oversee?
Sure. So the Wilmington Urban Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, or WMPO for short, is the federally funded and federally designated transportation planning agency for the Wilmington region.
Okay.
We are designated through federal law, and we're based on the Federal Highway Act of 1962.
Okay.
And so any urbanized area that has a population of 50,000 or greater is considered a metropolitan planning organization.
Okay.
And once you hit a threshold of 200,000 people, then you become what's called a transportation management area. And so in 2012, based on the 2010 decennial census, the Wilmington MPO reached that threshold and are now a transportation management area. And so we are required by federal law to conduct transportation planning in a continuing, cooperative, and comprehensive manner, or also known as the 3C manner.
Okay.
And so what we are is we are the organization where local decision makers come together to make decisions about transportation. And so we have a 13-member board that sets the policy and direction for the organization. 12 of those are elected. One is appointed by the governor and the legislature to serve the North Carolina Board of Transportation, and currently that's Landon Zimmer,
Okay.
Who serves on our board.
Yep.
We currently conduct transportation planning for 494 square miles, serve a population of about 300,000 people in southeastern North Carolina.
So what is that kind of geographical? Does it include like Pender, like other counties other than New Hanover?
So we provide transportation planning services to 7 municipalities and all or portions of 3 counties.
Okay.
And so those 7 municipalities are the city of Wilmington, Leland, Belleville, Navassa, Wrightsville Beach, Carolina Beach, and Curry Beach.
Okay. Got it.
We also serve all of New Hanover County, and then portions of Brunswick, which encompasses Leland, Belleville, and Navassa, but then also a portion of unincorporated area in Brunswick County, and then also the Hampstead area in Pender County, and up to 210.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's a big chunk. That's a big area.
It is. We go all the way up, but don't go into Surf City.
Okay. And then, so your position as the executive director, is that an appointed commission, appointed position? How did you get to your role and where you are?
So my position and the organization as a whole has grown. Funny story, when I came down to Wilmington, just going back to when I started my career in Jacksonville, North Carolina. And for, I guess it was about the first 9 months, 6 to 9 months, I lived in Emerald Isle. And then in very early 2002, I moved to Wrightsville Beach.
Good move.
And so I've lived in either Wrightsville Beach or Wilmington since that time. And so there wasn't a position open in 2002. In 2004, I actually joined the Wilmington MPO, and I joined the organization as an associate transportation planner. And the first day that I came to work here, Mark Tinkler was the executive director or senior transportation planner at that time was the title. And Mark said, I want to take everybody out to lunch. And I thought Mark was taking everybody out to lunch so he could introduce me to the team. And so we go out to lunch, went to the Copper Penny, and he says, oh, I just want to tell you all that I submitted my resignation today.
Nice.
And
Your first
so,
day.
my first day. So with that, I think it was about February of 2005, I got promoted to what was at that time the senior transportation planner. The MPO board changed the title to executive director somewhere around 2008 or 2009.
Okay.
And so, and I've served in this role essentially since 2005. So I've been with the organization and you know, for over 20 years. And,
Yeah.
And so I've seen a lot of changes.
I bet.
And we've seen a lot of accomplishments too, and this building is just one of those accomplishments.
Yeah, this is truly an awesome project, and to see it finally completed.
You're learning.
I'm learning. I'm definitely
you know
learning.
with your construction on Market Street what it's like to renovate a building.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking at this. I'm like, man, there's a lot more ideas that I could take from looking at this, but that'll come down the road.
Well, there's a whole story about this building and how we became to occupy it.
Yeah, let's talk about that now, because I definitely wanted to hear that.
Sure. So I guess it was in 1999. The city of Wilmington conducted a feasibility study to look at whether a multimodal transportation center was feasible for the area, and at that time that feasibility study demonstrated it was. And so what a multimodal transportation facility is where you bring multi-modes together. And so the concept behind this multimodal facility would be to house our passenger rail station, our future passenger rail station, which we're actively working on trying to reestablish passenger rail back to Wilmington.
Okay.
Also house our public transportation system, which we've got Paget Station next door.
Yep.
And so and then also bring some walking and bikeability to the area. And so in, I guess it was 1999 or very early 2000s, that study identified that a multimodal transportation center was feasible. And so in, I guess it was about 2005, 2004, 2005, sometime in that area, the city undertook an analysis, a site selection analysis, to determine what the best location for a multimodal center would be. And there were a number of sites that were evaluated. Matter of fact, the Lewis Berger Group was a consultant for the city that helped with that effort. And so the final selection was the area between Red Cross, Hanover, 3rd and 4th.
Yep.
And so the MPO was able to partner with the Cape Fear Public Transportation Authority to help fund Paget Station, which we have out there today. The area north of Campbell Street, or between Campbell and Hanover, where the rail bed is, that's identified for a future passenger rail station. And so that left this one building that we sit in today as open for some sort of development. And we didn't really know what the building should be used for. And so ideas over time kind of bounced around, but nothing was ever finalized. And so I guess it was somewhere around 2019, Sterling Cheatham was the city manager at that time. And Hurricane Florence had come in and Matter of fact, the parapet on the north wall had actually collapsed because of Florence.
No way.
And so we had bricks that were, on the street, which we brought into the building and saved. And so I said to Sterling, I said, if we could figure out how to fund this facility, would you be willing to allow us to move up there? And it would really give the MPO a face, because we are the regional transportation planning agency for the Wilmington region, but we're housed in the city of Wilmington. So a lot of people thought, well, you work for the city of Wilmington or you work for NCDOT.
Right.
But we're actually the federally designated transportation planning agency for the region, and we're a regional entity. And so we were able to identify the necessary funds through the city of Wilmington, which was a major contributor, New Hanover County, and then also the North Carolina Department of Transportation.
Yep.
And through that partnership, we were able to renovate and rehabilitate this building, which had originally been built in 1894.
So cool.
And it was a grocery store in 1894, and then over the years, obviously, it changed hands and changed development. I think the last businesses that occupied the facility were a contractor business and a beautician's business, but it had been vacant for a number of years, and so we were able to take a dilapidated structure and turn it into what we have today.
Amazing.
Which is what I'm very proud of. It's I would say it's one of my greatest achievements, is to turn this facility into what it is today.
Yeah, so you're accomplishing creating a space where the MPO can exist, but also part of revitalization of downtown Wilmington. I mean, taking a historic building and giving some and maintaining the history. Like, I'm looking at the brick walls over here. I'm like, those things are 100 years old probably.
Oh yes, I mean
120 years old, huh?
1894. But
okay, maybe I should keep going up a couple more.
But you've got to think too. I mean, we've continued a pattern, of historic preservation in the city. I mean, one of the city's unique characteristics is its historic qualities.
Yeah.
And so if you look across the street, we've got the Brooklyn Arts Center. If you look catty corner to us, we got Edward Teach Brewery. That was an old firehouse, an old church. And so we're just continuing the pattern of historic preservation. And so I feel privileged to be able to do that with this building.
Definitely. So did the city, who owned this, like before you guys bought
So
it?
back, as I mentioned, so the feasibility study was developed in 99, 2000. The site selection was completed in 2005. And then I think it was about 2007, 2008, the city of Wilmington and the North Carolina Department of Transportation actually worked together to purchase all of the properties necessary for the future center. And so the city contributed up to $1 million. I think the state contributed up to $10 million. Okay. And they acquired all of those properties that I had identified for the area between 3rd, 4th, Red Cross, and Hanover. And so, that's how they were purchased. DOT actually deeded the properties for Paget Station and this building to the city. The city then deeded the property where Paget Station is today to the Transit Authority, and DOT has retained ownership of the properties north of Campbell Street.
How is it working with so many different organizations?
It's great. I mean, I like to joke that, our role is to bring people together and collaborate. It's one of the 3 C's that's been identified in federal law, and so we do have the unique ability to work with so many interesting groups and organizations and people, not only in the transportation industry, but across the community. If you look at the partnerships and the collaboration that we have with the North Carolina Ports Authority or Wilmington International Airport,
Yeah.
or I sit on the Cape Fear Public Transportation Authority Board. You know, we serve 7 municipalities and all our portions of 3 counties.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there's a significant amount of coordination, collaboration, and bringing everybody together around transportation. And so it's a very unique organization that I get to serve as executive director of, and it's a privilege to do that.
Yeah. So when you know, almost 20, so 20 years now, in that time frame from 2005 to where we are today, like there's been a lot of change in Wilmington, a lot of positive. I moved down here in 2007 to go to UNCW, so I saw it from a little bit different perspective as a college student.
Sure.
But tell me, yeah, just before I want to talk about some of the projects that you guys have completed, but more, like in terms of the organization from 2005 when you were, you know, the senior transportation to where we are to now, what did the organization look like 20 years ago?
So when I walked in the door in 2003, I think we had a staff of 3.
Okay.
We had a senior transportation planner, we had an associate transportation planner, and we had a traffic count technician.
Okay.
Today, we have a staff of 14.
Awesome.
So we've been able to grow the organization, but we've grown along with the community.
Of course. Of course.
And so, but you know, we have our core MPO functions,
Mm-hmm.
which include the development of our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is the blueprint or foundation for our transportation infrastructure. We're required by federal law to develop a congestion management process where we evaluate 33 corridors throughout the community for congestion, and also conduct hotspot analyses at intersections, and then provide recommendations. Those recommendations then we fold into our Metropolitan Transportation Plan. We as a transportation management area get about $5 to $6 million annually that we get to disperse to our members through a competitive process, and that's through our direct attributable program. And so our members have been able to use those funds to implement projects that are important to locals. If you go to
Mm-hmm.
the town of Leland, for example, they were able to fund the old Fayetteville Road multi-use path with some of those funds. You go down to Carolina Beach, they were able to fund a portion of the Island Greenway.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
those funds. We've contributed a number of those funds in the city of Wilmington, New Hanover County. And so we administer that program.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's another core program that we have. But then we also provide services to our members that are not, say, core to MPOs, but are important to our members. So we coordinate all of the transportation impact analyses. We work closely with NCDOT and our members to coordinate the review of those. So what that is when a development generates 100 AM or PM peak hour trips, they're required to do an analysis to identify the mitigation measures
Yep.
necessary to accommodate that development. And so they do that through a traffic engineering firm, and so we coordinate those reviews. We also sit on our members' technical review committees, so if you want to go build a gas station or a subdivision,
Yeah.
we help to ensure with our members that they're meeting the codes or ordinances. And then we also have a traffic count program, and we collect over 350 traffic counts annually
Mm-hmm.
throughout our region. And then also we have a special count program that our members can request counts. And so say somebody is submitting a rezoning,
Mm-hmm.
then in New Hanover County may ask us for a traffic count so that they can then review that, determine what the level of service is on that roadway, and that helps them provide a recommendation whether they may support or not support
Right.
that rezoning. And so those are just some of the responsibilities that we have as part of the MPO. But you know, as I mentioned, when I got here,
Mm-hmm.
we had 3 employees. Now we have essentially 3 divisions. We have our what I would call is our planning division. We have our technical services division. Our planning division focuses on developing long-range plans, such as our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, but they also develop plans like bike ped plans, like Walk Wilmington, for example, or the Carolina Beach bike and ped plan, or corridor studies like out on Market Street. And then we have our technical services side of the house, which focuses on, as we talked about, the traffic impact analysis review, the development review, and the traffic count program. And then we also have our financial side of the house, because we are 80% federally funded, but we also receive funds from our local members.
Got it.
And so,
sorry, when you say members, what, like, can you define what,
Yes.
who are the members?
Sure. So the members are the 7 municipalities and the 3 counties.
Okay.
that
Okay.
I
Got it.
mentioned.
Got it. Yeah.
So,
Got it. Okay.
yes.
So, just more on like the corporate or the governance of the organization. So it's federally funded. You have a board of 12. One is appointed by the state.
Board of 13.
Board of 13, and then one appointed by the state. So, you as the executive director, do you report to the board?
Yes.
Okay.
I report directly to the board. So it's a unique setup in which I have a contract with the city as the lead planning agency. As I mentioned earlier, we're housed in the city.
Right.
But through my contract, it's through the city, but I work and report directly to the board.
Okay. And then how is the board appointed? The 12 or the 12 elected positions.
So they are appointed by their members.
Okay, got it. Got it.
And
okay.
so our board, the composition is 13. Each member has 1 vote. And so the city of Wilmington, which is the largest member, they actually have 2 council people on the board, Councilman Waddell and Councilman Spears.
Yep.
And then New Hanover County also has 2 representatives. However, one of the representatives is appointed from the Board of Commissioners, and the other representative is the representative to WAVE. Okay. So we, as the MPO, we're required to have a transit agency representative on our board, and so the county representative is the representative that's appointed to our board.
Got it. Yeah, no, it's a really interesting organization. I didn't know, like, it's a little hybrid. It's like a hybrid of almost like a county and federal, but it makes more sense to me now.
Yes, it's unique.
Yeah.
And you know, the city is our fiscal agent, but we have, you know, as we talked about, I report directly to the MPO board,
right.
And so that's unique in that, you know, there could be some disagreements between the city and the board. And
I can imagine.
Sometimes you got to thread a needle, or it's interesting to navigate, but it's an exciting job, and I love what I do.
Yeah. What do you think the hardest part of your job is?
I mean, I don't know that there's, I don't want to say it's difficult. I mean, I've got a great board, and I love the board that I work with. But, you know, my staff jokes with me that I'm on the phone all the time.
Yeah.
I'm always on the phone.
Yeah.
I'm always talking to somebody.
Yeah.
So, so I think that probably the toughest part of the job is just the coordination and collaboration and making sure to keep everybody informed about what's going on.
Yeah.
And whether that be over the phone or through email or, you know, however I need to do it, it's really hurting a lot of cats.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, but it's a fun job, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
And especially just with all the development and all the growth and everything we have going on, not only do you have to manage, you know, the expectations and the information flow between everybody, but there's also just a lot. There's just a lot going on.
There is a lot going on. I mean, you're right. I mean, the development activity, the infrastructure that's being built.
Yeah.
There's just a lot a lot of things going on, and a lot of things on the forefront. You know, we're seeing a lot of, say, the city's transportation bond projects that are coming to realization now. DOT has a number of projects that are in the planning, design, right-of-way phases. You're going to continue to see more of implementation of infrastructure. You know, I know they're starting to move on the Gordon Road widening project, for example, and so that's a project that's on the horizon. They've got, you know, the improvements over on 133 in Brunswick County. There's a lot of activity, but there's a lot of things that happen in the background that nobody has any idea about. And also, you know, I guess take a minute to say that, you know, these projects, they don't happen overnight. You know,
these are huge fiscal projects.
A typical transportation project takes between 10 and 15 years to implement. And there's a number of different phases in a project. It's not you identify a project and you go build it. You don't just do that. You know, the first part of it is to show up in a plan. And so if a project in our region has federal money on it, it has to be in our long-range transportation plan. And so, you know, we update that long-range plan every 5 years. And so once a project gets identified in that, then it has to work its way through the prioritization process. And in North Carolina, we have the Strategic Transportation Investment Law, which is the data-driven process for how we select projects. And so there's a whole prioritization process for how projects are selected at, say, the state level. And then once a project gets funded, then you've got to go through the planning and the environmental review. And then once you complete that step, then, you know, you go through and finalize the design. Once the design's finalized, then you've got to go out and buy the right-of-way. Once the right-of-way is acquired, then you got to move the utilities. Once the utilities are moved, then you can actually construct the facility. And then you go and cut a ribbon on it. So it's not something that happens in a short duration.
Well, it's probably a good thing, you know, pros and cons, but I mean, when we're making huge changes or huge investments to our infrastructure, we probably want to have a pretty good plan and have done the diligence to make sure that we're doing it the right way, right?
Well, I can assure you that the due diligence is being done. You know, and so, you know, it just, you just don't put something in a plan and it comes to fruition. And you know, and I've been lucky enough to be a part of a number of large projects in our region. You know, I was lucky enough to be part of, say, the Wilmington bypass. Or the military cutoff extension and the Hampstead bypass that's under construction now. You know, those are major investments in our region in infrastructure, and are going to, some have helped mobility, and others will help mobility.
What do you think, like looking into the future, what are like the most critical, like I wouldn't just call them issues, but what are the most critical things that we need to address here in Wilmington in the next like 10 to 15 years?
Well, I think funding is key. You know, we're seeing costs of projects going up, so we're seeing inflation and cost increases, which is potentially delaying implementation. But you know, we are moving forward. You're going to continue to see changes, and you know, the Hampstead bypass is a good example for Wilmington. People don't realize that that's even probably in our planning area. But there's a huge investment that's being made in Pender County and northern New Hanover County with the construction of the Hampstead bypass. But you know, that's a huge investment in our region that we're seeing today, and the construction's going to take another 5 years to complete. But at the end of the day, the impact that road is going to have on existing 17 is going to be tremendous. And so, you know, that project is very important. It's a priority of our board. Our board adopted a strategic plan back in 2022, and they identified 5 funded priorities and 1 unfunded priority. And so the 5 funded priorities were the Hampstead Bypass, Independence Boulevard Extension, the interchange at Carr and MLK, the interchange at Market, Eastwood, and the Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway, and the interchange at Military Cutoff in Eastwood. The unfunded priority, which now has some funding, is the replacement of the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge. And that is our board's top priority at this point.
I can imagine.
And so, you know, there's been a lot of discussion about that project, but that is the #1 priority of our board, is to try to figure out how we implement that replacement project in working collaboratively with the North Carolina Department of Transportation, because we are partners. You know, as I talked about earlier, you know, we have a number of partners and members, and we work very collaboratively with those. And at the top of that list is NCDOT.
Let's talk about the bridge project. That was definitely on the list. I guess, I mean, just generally, to recap kind of the situation and really get an understanding for what's going on, what's the problem and why do we need to replace it? And where are we in the process, and what are the kind of options or, you know, plans that we have to make it happen?
So the bridge is functionally obsolete. It's safe to drive across.
Right.
But it is functionally obsolete. And then also, you know, we need to upgrade the capacity. And so the current bridge is 4 lanes. It needs to go to 6. And so, you know, the need is that the bridge is 50 years old. And also we need to add some additional capacity. The challenge is how we do that. You know, and so for a long time there was a focus on adding capacity to the south with, say, the Cape Fear Skyway or Cape Fear Crossing. You know, and that project was stop, go. And so in around 2019, the focus started on the replacement of the bridge. And so, you know, DOT completed some feasibility studies, identified 3 different alternatives. And so, you know, we're currently working through, actually it may have even been 4 different alternatives at the time, I can't quite remember, but we're currently working through the process of you know, how to replace the bridge. It's the priority. And so, you know, I guess the cost is a challenge.
Right.
You know, DOT recently released an updated cost estimate of $1.1 billion for a 135-foot fixed span option.
And that's the height that we would need to be able to let, like, the larger vessels come through?
The height is a point of discussion right now. You know, we sit on the merger team, so there's a merger team, and large projects, large transportation projects go through what's called the NEPA 404 merger team. And so through that process, a number of agencies get together and try to come up with what's considered the least environmentally damaging practical alternative. We are one of the merger team members. Luckily, we're not party to the decision on the height. That decision on height will be based on a recommendation from the Corps of Engineers to the Coast Guard, and then the Coast Guard will make the final determination on height.
Got it.
And so right now there's 3 different options for a height. One is a 65-foot movable that goes to 135 foot in an up position, and that would be very similar to what we have out there today. Another option is a 135-foot fixed, which was what DOT submitted as part of their grant application, and which the feds awarded $242 million. And then the third alternative is 100 foot plus or minus 35 feet. And so that gives the flexibility that, say, the Corps of Engineers and the Coast Guard come back and say that it needs to be 108 feet or 110 feet.
Got it.
Then it could be that 110 feet. It doesn't have to be 135 or 65. There's that variation in there.
Got it.
And so that's where that 100-foot plus or minus 35 came from. And that came out of a merger team meeting in which all the agencies were sitting around a table discussing what the options should be. And so, you know, a decision on height is expected sometime soon. And then once that decision is made, then the merger team can get back together in our work to determine what is the least environmentally damaging practical alternative for a bridge replacement.
Got it.
Another key piece of it is trying to figure out where we find the money to fill the gap, because you know, we got $242 million from the federal government. The MPO submitted the project as a toll facility, or we modified our project submission to score the project as a toll facility in the last prioritization cycle. And in doing that, it did score high enough at the statewide tier. It scored in the top 10, I think it was, in the statewide tier. And so we were able to get $85 million there from DOT. So you've got roughly $330 million of a $1.1 billion project. And so we've got to figure out how we're going to fill that gap. And so our board has said they want to explore all options, including tolls or public-private partnerships. You know, we don't know what that final option will be, but there's going to have to be a funding stream in order to fill the gap.
Yeah, that's a pretty big delta to cover.
It is, and so we're continuing to work with our partners at NCDOT to try to identify ways to fill that gap, whether that be through, I know the state has submitted some additional grant applications. You know, we're just actively working on trying to reduce the cost to the department.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for going into those details, because that's a hot topic right now. And yeah, it's just good to, you know, kind of hear it from your mouth what's going on.
Well, I think, you know, the next key milestone is obviously the determination of what the height is going to be, and from there you can, you know, we'll be able to figure out what the exact path of the bridge is going to be, and also, you know, work through the planning and environmental work, but also the next big key component is trying to figure out how we're going to fund the thing.
Well, enough about the bridge.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I know. I appreciate you talking about it. But so switching gears a little bit, I know, you know, just talking about transportation and city planning, you were telling me that you've got a trip to go to Italy, go to Europe coming up soon?
We're going to go in a few years.
Okay.
My wife and I are going to go in a few years to see, you know, what, and hopefully bring back some ideas.
I was going to say, I mean, it could be a little bit of a business development, you know, trip to go kind of see how different cities and different things are laid out.
I could probably pick your brain knowing that you were just overseas not too long ago.
Yeah, we got to live in Zurich for 7 months and we lived in Europe for a couple of years. But you know, nothing's better. Different situations call for different setup. But man, if you guys are able to do a peer visit to Zurich and check out the infrastructure that they have going on, I mean, it's just
I should
world class.
try to see if I could sell that to our board.
Seriously, I'll come help you, man. I'll be the first one to back you up on that.
See if they can support a trip to Zurich and take all the board with us and see how that would work out. But talking about Zurich, we've spent a lot of time talking about roads, but just so people are aware, we're not just an organization that's focused on roads. We're multimodal.
Yeah, and the rail I'd like to hear about. That's kind of where I was trying to go.
So we're focused on, all modes of transportation, whether we work, as I mentioned earlier, collaboratively with Wilmington International Airport, NCDOT, our members. We've funded a number of bike and ped initiatives, but, also, if you want to talk about rail, we've been working actively with the state on an effort to try to reestablish passenger rail service back to Wilmington. And as we talked about at the beginning, the area across the street is prime for that future rail hub. But the reestablishment of passenger rail service is not something that's going to happen overnight.
No way.
So
No way.
NCDOT, so let me back up just quick. With the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, there was a significant amount of funds allocated to the Federal Rail Administration for reestablishment of passenger rail and establishment of passenger rail and things like that. And so DOT, they have what's called a US DOT and FRA have what's called the Corridor Identification Program. And so the North Carolina Department of Transportation submitted, I believe, 12 potential corridors in the state of North Carolina.
Okay.
About 7 of those received funding for planning. And so the first phase of that effort is to scope the corridors. And so each one of those 7 received $500,000 for scoping. And so NCDOT plans to wrap up the scoping for the Wilmington to Raleigh corridor in October of 2025. The next step would be to develop a service development plan, and that would be that's step 2. And so that service development plan would look at where we would have stations and things like that. And this is all built upon the refresh of the Southeastern Passenger Rail Study. So back in 2004, there was what was identified as the Southeastern Passenger Rail Study that looked at 2 options, one via Goldsboro and one via Fayetteville to connect Wilmington and Raleigh. And so it did not make a recommendation on which route to go. Okay. There was a refresh done, I think it was completed in 2024, and it recommended the route from Raleigh through Goldsboro to Wilmington. And so, that was the corridor that the state submitted through the Corridor ID program. It was the corridor that received funding. And so this would really be the next step, is to develop that service development plan. We'll know what that service development plan will cost at the end of October. And then that requires 90% federal, or it provides 90% federal and requires 10% state or local match. And so we would need to identify where that match is going to come from, and we're having some conversations about where that could potentially come from to fund that 10%. The cost for a service development plan could range from $1.5 million up to $4 million, and so we think ours is somewhere in the middle. But we really won't know the answer to that until October of 2025.
That's pretty exciting.
But we're still, working very collaboratively, that word again, with NCDOT. You know, we have a important project that would utilize a portion of the rail corridor for a rail trail. We've completed a master plan for the rail trail and identified that we could accommodate both a trail and passenger rail service within the footprint or the right-of-way. And so we are actively working on a design for the first phase of the overall downtown trail. And so the first phase goes from right out here to the Lovegrove Bridge. And so we're actively working on that design now and collaborating with DOT. And then the next phases would be from the Lovegrove Bridge over to the Cross City Trail along Oleander Drive. And so we're working on some feasibility studies for phases 2 and 3 with DOT on that. So that would then connect into the Cross City Trail, which you know can
That's
get
so
you
neat. Yeah, that's really
around
cool.
Wilmington. The Cross City Trail is the spine of our Greenway network, and so, you know, the whole plan is to create the network of infrastructure that will enhance transportation in the community.
Yeah, now, I love the when you mentioned one of the projects being the Carolina Beach Greenway. We live in Seabreeze, right near Carolina Beach, so we go down there all the time and take the dog for a walk or take the kid out, ride the bikes, and that's it's a really nice addition. So
we've got a lot of opportunities,
yeah.
that's for sure, in the Wilmington region, and so, but we've got, you know, I can say that we have a tremendous organization, and the staff that work for the MPO are very knowledgeable and are true assets to the organization, and I believe the best in the business.
Yeah. Just in our last couple minutes here as we wrap up, we talked about, you know, some of the, you know, the big impact projects, you know, the bridge being one, you know, a lot of the pedestrian bike trails. What about just like, you know, how are we keeping up with, you know, all the development that's been going on, you know, just for residential, you know, and multifamily and affordable housing is super important. And now that, you know, we have all that, you know, just keeping up with just like the basic infrastructure of getting from point A to point B.
Well, it's integrating transportation and land use planning is key. Working collaboratively with our members, as we talked about earlier, the transportation impact analysis. If a development's going to generate a certain number of trips, then they've got to mitigate that. But also, public transportation is critical to our growth and development. And as a member of the WAVE board, you know, we just went through a route restructuring. We're looking to enhance frequency on certain routes. And you know, that's public transportation is critical to how we grow and develop as a community.
Yeah. Well, so I'm going back to my European time here, and this might sound it is crazy, but you know, and I'm using Zurich as an example, which is again like a best of the best in the world of transportation, but in that area, using public transportation is what everybody does. Whereas here in the States, I feel like there's like almost a negative connotation with, oh, I take the bus to work. You know, it's for, you know, people that don't have a car, for example. And so, yeah, I mean, if there's a solution where we can create, you know, efficient public transportation, I'd be one of the first people to hop on that, you know?
Well, I think you're going to see improved frequency of our routes. You know, we're also going to the micro transit model with Ride Micro, and so, you know, our goal is to increase ridership on the routes and get over that stigma of it being a negative and turn it into a real positive.
Yeah. And I mean, I know this sounds crazy, but I mean, if it would be really interesting to go and spend a couple days in Zurich or some city and just watch how this. I mean, I know that's just crazy, but
well, I mean, it's not just Zurich. I mean,
there's
other
like,
examples across the country where
here in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, but and you know, I just got back from DC, and you know, they've got a strong transit network there, but they've got a lot more people as well, and so, yeah, but you can go and see what other communities are doing, and bring back those ideas, and some of the best ideas that are out there you can bring to our community. I know we've done that. You know, I've been to Greenville, South Carolina is a good example.
Yeah.
Went up to Richmond. We've been around to look at what other communities are doing and bring some of those ideas back here.
Yeah, I know, and there's so many factors that go into it as well. I'm just being playful with that idea, but you know, unfortunately, we're kind of at our time. We got a lot more to think about, and at some point down the road, we're going to be able to do this for 2 or 3 hours.
We could go sit at a bar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that'd be real fun. So, thank you again, man. I really appreciate it, and thanks for everything that you do for our community.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thanks as well,
really
Chris.
Appreciate it, Mike.
I appreciate it.